Good afternoon. Welcome to Business as Usual. This is Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. Thrilled to be here, particularly thrilled today as we have one of our board members and a dear friend of the tech community for a long time, Jay Katarincic. And I'm joined here today with Jonathan Kirsting, Vice President of all things media at the Tech Council. So just to get all the housekeeping out of the way, I'm just going to say that I want to thank our sponsors, which include Huntington Bank. They've been with us right from the beginning. And beginning this week, we're also especially proud of Sheets. The partnership that we've had with Sheets has been a couple of years old, but you might not know that they actually have an innovation center in Pittsburgh and working on the new iteration of Sheets. So we're really excited about them. And they have a very important mission, and they're a family business that's quite large and has a lot of impact. So pay attention to Sheets. Right, they are definitely going to make some interesting appearances over the next couple of years. Also, Deloitte, longtime partner with the Tech Council. They have been a force in the region. And if you don't know anything about them, they actually serve, in the US, serve more than 85% of the US Fortune 500 companies. So they've been a partner, they've participated, and they actually have representation on our board. So also want to give a shout out to AT&T, who has joined us over much of this journey as well, and helping us with the digital divide and making sure that there's access. So lots of issues in this COVID period of time. So I wanted to make sure that we thank them, and all of you should use them as well. So as a programming note, tomorrow we have the President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Penguins, David Morehouse, and Thursday we have State Representative Valerie Gatos, and we wrap up the week with Ryan Scott, who's built a fascinating program over at Carlo, and it's their social justice institutes, and they're really doing some interesting things, particularly relevant in this day and age. So stay tuned, and we're always trying to provide relevancy. We've muted your microphones so not to hear any noise in the background. And we also have a chat. The chat is intended that it's interactive, and hopefully we'll have time to ask Jay some questions. So I'm gonna jump right in. I'm very excited on a personal and professional level to, have Jay as our guest. Jay Katarincic has been around in the venture community for quite a while. It's been at least 2+ decades in terms of the existence of Draper and Draper Triangle, and he'll talk about that in a minute. But what you might not know is he's actually very involved civically. He's been on the board of the Tech Council for a long time, has been very instrumental in many things behind the scenes for us, as well as in the forefront. And his passion about Pittsburgh cannot be underestimated. If you don't know him, pay attention today, because he is someone who has deep, not only roots, but also caring about moving this region forward. And he is involved right now, he's the board chair of the Children's Institute. And if you don't know anything about them, they're in Squirrel Hill, and they do pretty amazing things for people who have an array of different abilities. And their needs are quite profound. And it really takes a lot to try to serve this population. So giving you a wide range, right? So he's been on the board of the Tech Council, helped us on our financial team, also is involved in public policy. And all in all, he's really just a good egg. I have a lot of fun with him, and he's been a good friend, as I said earlier, to me and the Tech Council. So thank you I wanted to set that up so that you can, just understand a little bit about who Jay Katarincic is. So Jay, I'm going to jump in and, give us an overview about Draper, sort of the history, the mission, set the table for us.
Sure. Thanks, Audrey. Before I start, thanks for doing this series. I mean, you and I have talked a lot about it, and it's been a real service to Pittsburgh. I mean, I think this is number 83 or 84 in the daily briefings, and I can only imagine what your teams had to do to put these on. But thank you for all of us in the tech community, because I think it's been not only enlightening, but it's been a fun way to break up the day, and so thank you. So Draper, we started the firm in 1999, and it was a little bit of an atypical way that you start a venture fund. We were talking with Jerry Cohen, who is one of the true heroes in the city of Pittsburgh, when he was the president of Carnegie Mellon, and he wanted to set up a venture fund in Pittsburgh, and he came to myself and some of my partners and said, hey guys, you seem to kind of understand this tech stuff. Why don't you set up a venture fund? And we said, well, thanks a lot, Dr. Cohen, but we don't know anything about running a venture fund. And, I think some of my investors will tell you 2 decades later, we still don't know very much. But so we decided that in order to start a venture fund that could be successful, we needed to, at that time, get some connectivity to the coast. So we partnered with the firm Draper, Fisher, Jurvetson, and off we went. And, I think it's now 57 or 58 investments later. We're still doing it, and we're still having fun. We invest only in early stage technology companies, so primarily Series A and on a rare occasion Series B. And probably 60% of our investments are based in Western Pennsylvania, though we also invest a significant amount of dollars in Ann Arbor and in Ohio, particularly in the Cleveland and Columbus regions. So if you think about the boundaries are kind of Carnegie Mellon's campus and the University of Michigan's campus and everything in between, and all technology focused, with a minor in medical device. So we do a little bit of medical device investing, and we have been, over the years in a couple specific sectors.
What would you say is your sweet spot? I mean, how would you sort of describe that?
Sure. We used to describe it as 6 folks and a bag of cheese curls and in a case of Yoo-Hoo, and I think it's changed a little bit. In that, we're now a firm where we're investing just as a company is turning its first dollar of revenue. A company, it's significantly cheaper today to build a product than it used to be.
Sure.
You can get to minimally viable product faster. And so it's a time where they're getting their first customer, but they haven't figured out really how to sell to a customer or how to scale their sales force. And so that's really the sweet spot that we invest in our IT companies. In our med device companies, different story where it's, really, it's really a concept in those companies.
Okay. So let's just wheel it back just like a few months ago, right? Even though it seems like a lifetime ago. What were you seeing? What were you doing pre-COVID, pre-March?
Yeah, it's hard to remember back that far. I mean, it's, the new normal it seems like it's been here for so long and is, obviously not been a fun time. We were seeing a ton of deals. We were seeing all of our companies, with a few minor exceptions, doing very, very well. I mean, I think, I don't think anybody on this call could disagree. The economy was humming in, late January, early February.
Mm-hmm.
Mid-February, we started to see, cases are really spiking in China. Cases are spiking in Italy. We're starting to see the first cases in the United States. And so right at that point in time, we kind of started to raise the yellow caution flag, and we pulled that one down pretty fast and put up the double reds, pretty quickly. But in the January timeframe, business was great. Business plans were flying in the door, and our companies were doing great. And so, we were all, living happy, and all of a sudden, curveball hit us right between the eyes.
Mm-hmm. And so now, that curveball, what does that mean? Does that mean stop investing? What do you see now? It's these 4 months, because we've had some investments in the region. We've had an exit in the region. We had a big investment in the region. We've seen some activity that hasn't stopped.
Yeah, no, I mean, so we told me, I'll speak from our own experience. We kind of, starting mid-February, said, hold on, guys, we gotta pull everything in and retrench and make sure that all of our companies are ready to deal with whatever it be. And we went through a bunch of scenario planning, and I won't give you the infomercial on kind of what we did, because I think everybody on this call who runs a company, who's in a company, did the same thing. But so we, that was the first part of it. And then we sat back and said, okay, what are the impacts of COVID? And then what are going to be the long-term implications of COVID? And went through probably a month-long process of developing our thesis around that, and then kind of came out the other side. We have not made a new investment since March. There's really nothing in the hopper that's down the path, but that's not unusual for us. I mean, we make 3 or 4 investments a year. Right. And suddenly there could be, 2 of them could show up this afternoon, and we could get really excited and go fast on them. But, we're obviously more cautious. we're not seeing as many deals.
Not? Okay.
I think that's part of, for two reasons. One, I'm not sure there's many companies being started. And two, we're a feet on the street investor. I mean, we're always out at Carnegie Mellon or in Oakland or in East Liberty or wherever meeting people. And because we can't go out, the world's changed a little bit. And I think it's a little bit harder to connect over things like this than it is in person. But, doors are open for business and we're still rolling. I mean, it's, obviously harder and more difficult, and you don't have the casual, all your conversations now are scheduled rather than, sticking your head into somebody's office.
Have you, does this time remind you of any time over the last 2 decades at all?
I mean, when you're old like me, you've been through a few of these. So it's, it's definitely, so there's really kind of, been through 3 cycles, 2001, 2008, 2014. 2008 and 2014, not at all. It has, I don't think it has any relevance because we bounced back so quickly in both of those cases. It reminds you a little bit of 2001, where you just had an absolute meltdown in the capital markets. I don't think it was an economic meltdown as much as this one, but it was an absolute meltdown in the capital markets, and you didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think we're still in that phase with this. I mean, I think we maybe saw a little light 3 weeks ago, and suddenly that light got extinguished pretty quickly. And I think, we'll see where I didn't see this morning's numbers, but, given that's thumbs up means not good.
Exactly.
Given what's happened in California, the Florida numbers, Pittsburgh numbers, I mean, I think we're in for a little bit longer. I mean, Fitz talked about it yesterday, and he knows a lot more than I do, and he wasn't super optimistic.
Well, we have a couple of questions that I want to start asking you. So, Jonathan, I don't know if you want to read some of them, but like Matt, Jeff, and Anita have some questions.
Let's start with Anita. Her question, I think, is really interesting. So would Draper invest in manufacturing startups to bring this back to Pittsburgh?
Yeah, and Anita, it's a great question, and it's funny. Audrey and I were just talking about this last night.
Right.
So it's a very timely question. We do a lot of robotics investing. So which obviously has a great deal of nexus to manufacturing. So I think the answer, Anita, is I know the answer is it depends. I mean, I think if it's a manufacturing business has an awful lot of technology, an awful lot of automation involved in it, I think it's something that we would be very interested in. If it's something that's maybe a little bit less automated, then we probably would not. But there's other investors that we would refer you to that may have some interest in those businesses.
And before you jump to Jeff's, Jonathan, really quick, I think everyone needs to just be reminded that when Jay and Draper start to talk about who they invest in and who they don't, they're also a wealth of resource.
Good point.
In terms of connecting to other investors and other opportunities. So even if I have a conversation with Jay about, Fred or Susie's company, very often he'll say, you know what, I know where there might be a better fit than in terms of what we're doing. So exactly. You really need to understand that this part of the conversation is multifaceted in terms of resources. So Jonathan, I think Jeff has a question, and Matt.
Definitely, yeah. Jeff, I love Jeff's question here. I can't wait for your response on this one, Jay. So is there perception among VCs that education is too hard of a nut to crack in such an immense need for education technology in the country? Why do you think VC enthusiasm is particularly low in that sector?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And it is I've made 3 EdTech investments in my life. And we have one of the best EdTech institutions in the country. And we actually have a pretty good little EdTech community here. 3 months ago, I never would have done another EdTech deal. I've just gotten burned too many times in EdTech, and I love EdTech. I mean, I shouldn't say it. We had one great success in a company called Carnegie Learning in the EdTech space. And then we've had a couple not be quite as successful. But I do think that COVID and the way that not only that with distance learning, but the fundamental disintermediation that's coming in higher ed is going to make EdTech a much more lucrative space for people to invest. And I think you're going to see people build very meaningful companies going forward in the EdTech space. I mean, you've already seen a little bit of consolidation happen over the last 4 months in the EdTech space. I wish one of our EdTech investments that we sold for a bag of peanuts, I wish we still had, because it would be incredibly valuable today.
Right.
So, but yes, we would still now, again, I think given the last 3 months, I think we would go back and look at EdTech investments. And I think that VCs in general are going to put it back on their focus map.
Very cool. Brock Bergman's got a really good question here, Audrey. I'm going to flip this one up here. So given the current change in the world and things accelerating towards more of a digital first world in almost every industry, what are areas of interest do you find most interesting over the next 2 to 5 years, Jay?
Oh, Brock, that's a big question out of you.
Yep.
We got 13 minutes.
Full disclosure, Brock used to work with us until he started his own business. So, Brock, I think there's a bunch of things that are really exciting to us right now. Security companies are obviously super valuable. Anything that deals with collaboration is really interesting. Any advanced material that can help with antibacterial, antimicrobial, antivirus are really interesting, and we're looking at a lot of those. Obviously, automation to keep people further apart, et cetera, because knock on wood, we're going to have a vaccine and we're going to get COVID behind us. But I think a lot of the lessons that we've learned and a lot of the fears that have been planted in people aren't going to go away for a long time. And so, that's a big part of the investment thesis that we're looking at. The other space that this is a really focused area, but we're spending a ton of time looking at the ventilator space. Because, if you think about, if anybody's ever had a loved one or a friend on a ventilator, it's the worst experience that they could ever have. Right. And there's been no advancements in the ventilators in 40 years. I mean, an advancement in the ventilator space today is to change it from gray to blue. So we've been spending a ton of time looking at things in the ventilator space and other medical devices that can get people out of the ICU faster, so that we can flex the ICUs better than we have today.
Wow. Okay, I didn't even realize that. You still have a bunch more questions. So Jonathan, you want to keep going and maybe go up to the top? We missed a few.
Yeah, let me see here. I gotta get some scrolling going on here. So let me see here. So here's one from Anita. Basically, Pittsburgh workforce will need retraining to be able to be employed in companies. What about partnerships between universities and VCs and industry to retrain our workforce?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Anita must somehow be in my very small brain, because this morning I was thinking about how hard training is going to be going forward, at least over the next 6 or 9 months as we stay remote, because it's really hard to train people asynchronously. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a really important point. I think there's a bunch of things that are going to happen. It's the university's job to help. It's the private sector's job to help. We've got a great workforce investment board and the training things that come out. The Tech Council, I mean, Audrey, not to give a commercial for you, but the Tech Council is a wonderful, not only resource, but a source of training materials. So I think it's vitally important. Anita, I'm going to have to think about it, because we've got to come up with a solution, but I don't think it's going to be a simple solution. I think it's going to be a community effort that it's going to take to continue to retrain the workforce. Okay.
And then, so do you see any M&A activity increasing right now? Do you see some of that? Do you see some mergers and acquisitions? I mean, I know we've seen that on the learning management side, but that was pre-COVID.
Yeah. We're seeing a lot of people kicking tires right now. And I think a lot of it's because people are at home and they got nothing, there's a bunch of big company corporate development guys sitting around because they're not doing deals. And so they're out looking at a bunch of different things. So, we've spent a lot of time on the phone with them. I haven't seen a lot move forward. I mean, if you look at M&A activity, dollar volume's still pretty good because there have been a couple significant transactions. But if you look at number of transactions in the mean value of transactions, that's way down, and I don't think that's changing. I think the numbers for the third quarter, so July, August, September, are going to be awful in that space. And unfortunately, I think it's also going to be that in the VC world in terms of VC investment.
We've certainly seen that in the big retail world.
Yep.
And so, we've seen a lot of bankruptcies and actually what about valuations? Are you seeing any changes in valuations?
Where we're seeing changes in valuation, Audrey, is in the later stage companies. In the early stage companies,
Yeah.
if you're having valuation fights, you've got the wrong investor or the wrong company. The valuation issues are coming up in the bigger/later stage companies where it's either in a super hot space. So, somebody that's providing security tools,
Right.
collaboration software in a remote workforce. I mean, they can put every buzzword in a PowerPoint deck that you can imagine, and their valuations are soaring. On the flip side, companies that are more enterprise on-prem focused, not quite as attractive today. So I think overall valuations are down, but I think there are a significant number of industry, sectors where you are seeing valuation increases.
So what about capital raising for, in our region in terms of GPs?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been hard. I mean, as I always look back on my last 20 years, my biggest failure has been that we haven't been able to seed a broad and diverse set of general partners and venture funds. We're at this point, there's the number of venture funds in Pittsburgh. I can host around a very small table in a restaurant, and that's a really scary thing for Pittsburgh. So it's always been a hard time, and frankly, I do blame myself for not getting more venture funds stood up in Pittsburgh. But it's not getting it's not going to be it's not going to get any easier for the next 6 months, given the way that the large institutional investors have retrenched based on volatility in their portfolio.
So what are you hopeful about and what are you concerned about? So, you represent the region. I mean, in a lot of ways, you're out in Ann Arbor, you're out in Ohio, even though I think 60% of your investments are Pittsburgh based. What are you hopeful for? What are you concerned about?
Yeah, I mean, there's no bigger fan of Pittsburgh and no bigger optimist about Pittsburgh's future than me. We have so many. I mean, I shake my head all the time about 3 months ago we were on such a roll.
I know.
Such a fantastic president, Carnegie Mellon, who everything's about entrepreneurship and everything's about changing the region. Pitt, all the things that Pitt has done to stand up their innovation institute and to work hard, and the big companies starting to get behind helping the little companies. It's something if I want to talk about my other failure is a venture capitalist, we've had a really hard time connecting the small companies to the big companies. Audrey, you've done some of that. There have been some other efforts by other folks, but the companies are starting to. The big companies are starting to be willing to be alpha and beta customers. So there's so much to be excited about. I'm just worried that it's all come crashing down. I mean, I walked this morning from the gym to my office, and downtown Pittsburgh is depressing right now. And it's unfortunate that the vibrancy is gone, and we've got to get that back, and hopefully we're able to. So, my biggest concern is just that we've lost the momentum, and that people aren't going to be as willing to start businesses going forward.
But are you seeing that in Ohio and Ann Arbor as well?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing it definitely in Ohio. Ann Arbor is a little bit different of an animal because it's so self-contained.
Right.
I mean, the thing, Detroit, which is, I call Detroit a suburb of Ann Arbor. I'm sure that the folks
people say that. Yeah.
But Detroit, nothing going on. Ann Arbor's still okay because the university is still moving. I mean, like Carnegie Mellon is still using, but the Ann Arbor economy is all based around the university and the spinoffs from the university. Here, we're much more diverse, and so it's a little bit different.
But it'll be interesting for them, I imagine, as the fall approaches in terms of what happens in Ann Arbor. So what is the future for Draper?
Yeah, I mean, Well, I was able, my key still locked, still worked in the door this morning, so that's
That's
a
good.
that's a good
That's a good
start.
sign.
You know, Audrey, we're actually, and I've got to be a little bit careful so I don't break any fundraising laws, but we're working on something I think that's going to be really significant for Pittsburgh, and it's a fundamental shift in our organization to become much more focused on Pittsburgh, number one. So we're going to be much more Pittsburgh centric than we have. It's really going to be in partnership with the universities and with several large corporations who want to really go and solve the problem. And three, it's probably going to mean a little bit more capital for the region than we've been able to deploy in the past. And four, probably most importantly, we're going to have some fairly significant additions to our team.
Oh,
That,
nice.
I mean, it's the most excited I've been in my 20 years to kind of talk about the new team and the new mission, et cetera. That, you know, I apologize, I can't roll much of it out today, but
It's fine.
I don't need my lawyers yelling at me anymore. So.
No, so that, you know, that's a big investment. So you feel just as positive about it now, because I imagine you've probably been working on this pre-COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously just as positive. I mean, it's, you know, in order for that to be successful, we've got to go convince investors to believe in what we believe in. And
Right.
obviously they're focused on a lot of different things right now. And so it's slowed down a little bit, but, you know, that's just a delay. It's not a no.
We need to have Jay back on when he can make a full announcement for this. So I think this sounds
I'm not that exciting, trust me.
Not that exciting, but- So is there any lessons that having a regional approach, are there any lessons that you've learned from just the region, you know, the Ohio, the Michigans, any lessons in terms of ecosystems and the kind of investments you've made or partners?
You know, it's really simple. Back great people and you'll be successful. You know, and you know, it doesn't matter really what the idea is or how good the idea is. Back great people that are willing to bring in a team around them of even smarter people, and they'll be successful. And that's, you know, if there's one lesson that, you know, I wake up every morning and think about is make sure that the person that you're investing in is way smarter than you. And that's pretty easy in my case. But B, make sure that they're willing to listen and collaborate and, you know, be very true in their beliefs, but not be so inflexible that they can't change their views on things. So, you know, it's that simple. I mean, my biggest goal for the next, you know, decade, let's put it that way. I mean, I don't usually think in decades, but I'll think in decades for today is we've got to get Pittsburgh better capitalized from a venture perspective. Because if we can get Pittsburgh better capitalized, we will be able to get companies better capitalized. One of Pittsburgh's biggest problems is we've always undercapitalized our companies. And so they can't get the tempo into them that they need to. And if we can get more venture dollars to work, we'll be able to properly capitalize the companies. And I think you'll really see the region explode even faster than it's been exploding.
What about, just the last question, what about diagnostics? Have you ever invested in diagnostics?
Yes, we have invested in diagnostics. You know, as in everything, some very, very successfully and some not as successfully. I mean, it's got to be capital efficient. And the FDA process, you know, can get very, very expensive if you've got to go do a 300 or 400 person trial. And so we've got to understand the regulatory path that's out there. But yes, we've done diagnostics. I mean, you know, we used to have this cute little saying that if you inhale it, inject it, or implant it, we don't invest in it. I think we're changing a little bit of that right now. Not a ton, but we're looking at that. I mean, huge advancements in imaging have led us to look at more diagnostic tools. So, you know, yeah, if somebody has a diagnostic company, you know, my email address is on the website, or you know, send Audrey a note or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll make the connections. Absolutely. So one of the things that we do at the Tech Council is try to connect the big companies and the small companies. And just to do a plug is that tomorrow night we have our CIO of the Year Awards. It's the first time we've done anything like this virtually, but those chief information officers and chief security officers, it's a great way for people to get connected in terms of what kinds of things they're wrestling with and the kind of innovations that they might be thinking about or didn't even know. So I made a plug, and you can still register this. We're you know, it's our way of trying to keep the the entire community trying to be threaded together. It's not just the awards. So that's my pitch there. But Jay, what's your final words to us? We've had, great conversation. You have, and this whole thing about not being the smartest guy in the room is a little too self-deprecating. I know you have a JD. I know you've done a lot in finance, and you have a good eye for detail on lots of things, all Pittsburgh. But what do you want to wrap up and tell our guests and our listeners?
I'm the last person anybody should ever be taking advice from, but I think to me the biggest thing is, A, we're going to get through this, and B, we've just got to make sure we come out of it strong and fast, because there's going to be huge opportunities as these large cities really struggle to recover, and Pittsburgh's in a unique spot because the healthcare sector, the universities will get back to things relatively quickly. We've got a great chance to capitalize. But it's going to take everybody on this call and everybody in the community to do it. And so hopefully we really come together and put our little silos aside and really work as one city to make things happen.
All right, Mister, you have given us more time than I thought, and we had lots of questions. So if you need to get a hold of Jay, you can just go out to their website, and it's easy to get connected to him. There it is, Jay. It's at the bottom of the screen. Thank you, Lexi. She's that good. But Jake, first of all, thank you for your leadership in the community. Thank you for caring. Thank you for really trying to push the needle all the time when it comes to all things investment and public policy, as well as your work at the Children's Institute and other places where people don't have as many advantages. So I herald your leadership and your friendship. And, hopefully people got a little chance to see a little bit more about JK.
Yeah, hopefully I didn't put anybody to sleep. And Audrey, thank you, and Brian and Jonathan and Taylor and your entire team for what you've done. I mean, I think you've really done a fantastic job of keeping the community together with these half-an-hour sessions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your support. Okay, everyone. Until tomorrow, we have the head of the Penguins, David Morehouse, and he's got lots of stuff to talk about as well. So stay tuned. And reach out to Jay. He will respond to you. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.